This is where Nipsey Hussle was killed, outside his clothing store in South L.A. The gunman opened fire at close range, then jumped in his getaway car. As soon as news broke about the shooting, fans gathered here outside the store, and they're still here today.
It's the dramatic last video of rapper Nipsey Hussle, gunned down in Los Angeles.
Oh my goodness!
Paramedics worked frantically to keep him alive. Bystanders are in shock.
Are you serious?
This doesn't make any sense. My spirit is shaken by this, tweeted Rihanna.
She said I can't come back until they're finished cleaning up, and they take the longest time to clean up. Ignore the bumps on my head. They're stress bumps. I tried to go to my grandpa's house. His car is in the front, but he's not answering the door. And so now I'm stuck outside. And then I ended up crying because it's freaking hot out here and I can't go back inside my mother's house.
That is an 11-year-old girl sitting on the pavement, locked out of her own house, on the exact one-year anniversary of the day they shot her daddy dead. And the reason he died was a lie. And this is what he was really killed over, according to a man who knew the shooter personally.
He said Eric never actually the guy who actually who accused him of it was actually lying, and it was proven that there's no paperwork around him. Notice there's no paperwork that ever came out of him. But he walked up to Nipsey, and Nipsey's like, hey, you know, I heard that they're saying that you got paperwork on you, you know, you should probably get it checked out.
Wait, so you said Nipsey said, I think it's some paperwork on you.
Yeah, I've been hearing that there's some paper. So he did kind of imply that, hey.
There you go. That's what I'm saying.
That caused him to snap, and he just got tired of being called a snap. You know, he had been abused in the hood, like he had brain damage because the dude beat him down real bad, and, you know, he just got tired of it.
But this girl is now about to inherit everything her father built. But before we get into Emani's story, let's start with this story. Before her father was Nipsey Hussle, he was just Ermias. Ermias Joseph Oskadam, born in Los Angeles on the 15th of August 1985, was raised in the Crenshaw district of South Central Los Angeles. His mother, Angelique Smith, was a black woman from LA. His father, Dawit Oskadam, an Eritrean immigrant who came to Los Angeles in the 1970s. He had an older brother named Samuel, who would come to be known as Black Sam, and a sister named Samantha. That family, block, and intersection at Crenshaw and Slauson, all of it would end up mattering way more than anybody could have guessed back then. The kid had hustle in him early, and I mean literally early.
What you out here for? What are you after? And when I started asking myself some questions, I was able to make decisions a lot better. Because I wasn't thinking what looked cool. I'm thinking, what outcome do I want? I want to be successful. I don't want to go get life in jail like a gang of people I grew up with. I want to stand up on my potential. And then I start making decisions based on what I wanted. I've been in jail. Nobody in jail wants to be in jail. Everybody calling their lawyer, calling their girl, asking for pictures, stressing, trying to get out as soon as possible. So if you know that you don't want to be in there before you get there.
At 11 years old, he was shining shoes for $2.50 a pair, trying to buy his own school clothes, doing the numbers in his head on how many pairs he needed to hit per day. He went to Alexander Hamilton High School over in Castle Heights, but dropped out before he graduated. And at 14, he left home and joined the Rollin' 60s neighborhood Crips, which was the set that ran his part of Crenshaw. That decision, made by a 14-year-old boy who did not know any better, is the decision that follows this whole story all the way to the end. Keep it in your mind. Now, here is where it turns. In 2004, when he was 19, his father took him and his brother on a 3-month trip to Eritrea, and he paid for it partly with money he made hustling on the streets. That trip cracked something open in him. He saw a whole different way that a society could be arranged and met family he had never met. And he came back home with a different idea about what a man is supposed to build with his life. He stopped thinking about surviving the block and started thinking about owning the block. The music came out of that same corner. He sold his mixtapes out of the trunk of his car right there at Slauson Avenue and Crenshaw Boulevard, the exact same corner where he would one day open his flagship store, and the same corner where he would die. He put out Slauson Boy Volume 1 in December of 2005. He signed with Epic. It did not work out, so he walked away and started his own label, All Money In Records. And from that point forward, he moved like a businessman who happened to rap, instead of a rapper who wished he were a businessman. He got creative with it too. In 2013, he dropped a project called Crenshaw and only made 1,000 physical copies, priced at $100 each, and Jay-Z reportedly bought 100 of them for $10,000. The whole run sold out in less than 24 hours. He ran it back the next year with mailbox money at an even higher price. Then, in February of 2018, he finally dropped his real debut album, Victory Lap, and it landed at number 4 on the Billboard 200 and got nominated for Best Rap Album at the Grammys. But the music was never really the point. The point was ownership.
He put stores in this community so that folks in the neighborhood can have jobs. So folks in the neighborhood could learn how to be entrepreneurs and leaders. And that is exactly who Nipsey Hussle was.
In June of 2017, he opened the Marathon clothing store at 3422 West Slauson Avenue, a smart store with an app built into the shopping experience. Then he went further and bought the whole shopping plaza around it with a real estate partner, because he understood the difference between renting space in your neighborhood and actually owning your neighborhood. He opened Vector 90, a co-working space and STEM center for kids in Crenshaw, because he had seen how few black kids ever get put in front of a computer and told they belong there.
A rap star and another man from the Crenshaw district have teamed up to give back to their community.
CBS 2's Joe Kwan says the space offers something for the next generation of business leaders.
This is Vector 90, a space for local entrepreneurs like Deshae Green.
I grew up around here, and there is absolutely no space like this.
A space to learn how to launch a business, something the single mom of twins has already tried with her own dating app.
So Vector 90 opened up the day before my album release. It's basically an inner city co-work space. And in the bottom half is a science, technology, engineering, and math center, which is basically the skill set you need to go into Silicon Valley. Even when we did the grand opening, all the artwork on the walls were facts about technology and about these companies and how the demographics are in Facebook and Google and Twitter. And it's like the highest one has 8% African American people.
He hired people who were homeless, people coming home from prison, and put his money back into the same 6 blocks that raised him. He was sitting on panels talking about gang life and how to get young men out of it. And he was working with artists from rival sets, which in Los Angeles is not a small thing to do. And at home, he was a father. He had a son, Cross, with Lauren London, and he had a daughter from an earlier relationship with a woman named Tanisha Foster. Her name was Emani Dior Askadam, born in November of 2008. Her name means beautiful faith. She lived with her daddy, and he was in her life every single day, driving her to school, teaching her about integrity, and that doing right means doing right even when nobody is watching you do it. He called being her father his proudest accomplishment. Weeks before he died, he brought her with him to the 2019 Grammys red carpet, a little girl in a gown standing next to her father on the biggest night of his career. Remember that image. It matters in a minute. Now, the man who killed him. His name was Eric Ronald Holder Jr., and he came from the exact same place, same Crenshaw neighborhood, same Roland 60s ties, 29 years old at the time. Around the way, people called him Shitty. He was also an aspiring rapper, except his career never took off. 2 men from the same blocks with the same dream, and only one of them made it out. That gap is the whole story right there. And I want you to really understand how little the public actually knows about Eric Holder, because it says something. There is barely any independent record of his childhood, schooling, or his family, because he was nobody until the day he made himself somebody in the worst way possible. The only piece of his family that ever showed up in the record was a letter from his father read out at his sentencing 4 years later. He was already a convicted felon before any of this. He was carrying a black semi-automatic handgun around his own neighborhood. The woman he was seeing said she told him he carried it for protection. That is a man walking around his own neighborhood armed because he feels hunted in it. One man in that parking lot owned the building. The other man owned a gun and a rumor. By March of 2019, there was a rumor going around the hood that Holder had paperwork on Nipsey. In street language, paperwork means you cooperated. And in that world, being labeled a snitch is not gossip. It is a death sentence with a delay on it. Now here's the twist that most people never hear. According to a man who knew Holder personally, the rumor may not have even been true.
He said Eric never actually the guy who actually who accused him of it was actually lying, and it was proven that there's no paperwork around him. Notice there was no paperwork that ever came out of him, but he walked up to Nipsey, and Nipsey's like, hey, I heard that they're saying that you got paperwork on you, you should probably get it checked out.
Wait, so you said Nipsey said, I think it's some paperwork on you.
Yeah, I've been hearing that there's some paper. So he did kind of imply that, hey.
There you go. That's what I'm saying.
That caused him to snap, and he just got tired of being called a snap. He had been abused in the hood, like he had brain damage because the dude beat him down real bad, and, he just got tired of it.
So on the 31st of March, 2019, a man carrying a lie he could not shake walked into a parking lot where the most respected man in the neighborhood was standing. That afternoon, Eric Holder was not looking for Nipsey Hussle. He was in a car being driven by a woman he had been casually seeing for about a month, the woman the court records call Witness 1. He told her where to drive because he wanted food. Specifically, he wanted Master Burger, which sat right there in the same strip mall as the Marathon store. She later testified she did not believe Holder knew Hussle would be there. They pulled up around 10 past 3 in the afternoon. Nipsey was outside his own store doing what he always did, taking pictures with fans, signing autographs, talking with friends, and with the people who worked for him. He ordered his food, and then while he waited, he walked over to talk to Nipsey. He made several trips back and forth between the burger spot and the man standing outside the clothing store. Everybody who witnessed that conversation described the same thing. It was calm. Nobody raised their voice or squared up. Holder called Nipsey cuz. Nipsey recognized him and called him by his neighborhood name. Nipsey told him there were rumors going around that there was supposed to be paperwork on him, and that he had not read it himself, but that Holder should go address it directly with whoever was spreading it. Witnesses called it big brotherly advice. Holder also asked Nipsey if he had heard his new song. The woman driving even got out of the car and took a picture with Nipsey, then posted it to Facebook, not knowing what the next 20 minutes were about to bring. And then the conversation ended, with Nipsey waving him off, the way you wave off a little homie when you have said your piece and you're done talking. They got back in the car and drove off. And that's when it turned. Holder pulled out a black semi-automatic handgun. She knew he carried one for protection, but she testified she did not know he had it on him that day. He told her to drive around the block a certain way, and she flat out refused. She told him she was not letting anybody do a drive-by out of her car. So instead, they circled, made a few short stops, and he sat there and ate his chili cheese fries. Then he had her park in a different lot nearby, told her to stay put, got out on foot, and walked back toward the Marathon store. Between that conversation and that walk back, about 9 to 10 minutes went by. 9 or 10 minutes to cool off or eat or even turn around. And Holder did not.
For the person accused of and killing rapper Nipsey Hussle and wounding 2 others during an attack in broad daylight. Today, fans and neighborhood leaders gathered to remember the artist for his music and impact in the community.
Holder shot at Nipsey at least 10 times. 2 other men in the lot, Kerry Lathan, who was 56, and his nephew, Shermy Villanueva, were also shot, and they both survived. One of the men who worked at the store came running out when he heard it.
I ran outside, and I went straight to Nip. So you look at the videotapes, you see me on the tape. So everybody's looking at the shooting. Rewind the tape a little further and see what was going on prior to that. You know what I mean? So
his brother Black Sam tried CPR right there on the concrete. Nipsey was pronounced dead at 3:55 that afternoon. It is easy for a rapper to say he gives back. It is a whole different thing to buy the plaza, fund the lab, hire the people nobody else will hire, and then still stand on that same corner every single day like you never left it. Around there, they never even called him Nipsey. They called him Neighborhood Nip, and the man who shot him came from those exact same blocks. Holder ran back to the car, got in, and demanded his woman drive. He would not explain a thing and threatened to slap her if she did not move. Later that night, she had him use her own driver's license to check him in to a Motel 6, and she brought him food, cigarettes, and a phone charger. When she saw the posts online accusing him of killing Nipsey and asked him about it, he said nothing. She finally went to the police after she saw news reports describing her own car. The manhunt was on immediately. Police put out the description, the car, and the pictures, and the whole city was looking for him. He turned himself in on the 2nd of April 2019 at a mental health clinic. He got charged with first-degree murder, 2 counts of attempted voluntary manslaughter, 2 counts of assault with a firearm, and being a felon in possession of a firearm. Bail was set at $6.5 million. He pleaded not guilty. Before there was ever a trial, there was a grand jury and there was a fight over what the public was allowed to see. Prosecutors took the case to a Los Angeles County grand jury over several days in May of 2019, and it came back with a 6-count indictment. Those grand jury transcripts ran to roughly 515 pages across 3 volumes. The Los Angeles Times went to court and asked for them to be unsealed so the public could actually read them. Holder's defense fought it, arguing that letting all that out early would poison the jury pool and cost him a fair trial. On the 27th of June 2019, the judge unsealed them anyway. That decision is the only reason you and I can even talk about what happened in that parking lot in this much detail. The video itself, though, stayed restricted as the court never let the full footage out. There was another wrinkle that tells you how this world works. Kerry Lathan, one of the 2 men who got shot and lived, had been released from prison in September of 2018 after serving more than 22 years. He gave investigators inconsistent statements at first, and that was explained later as him being scared about his parole, because just being seen around a man with known gang ties could have violated his terms. Several witnesses in this case were reluctant, and some needed immunity before they would say anything at all, because in that environment, cooperating with police can get you killed. Which, if you were keeping score, is the exact same fear that got Nipsey killed in the first place. The snitch code took his life, and then it nearly took his case too. The trial ran for about a month in 2022. The prosecution laid it all out. Surveillance video from the businesses around the lot shows him arriving, walking back and forth, leaving, and returning on foot.
His defense pushed for a lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter because, they said, Holder was acting in the heat of passion. Prosecutors displayed videos and photos of Holder fleeing the scene with a semi-automatic handgun.
The video is absolutely essential because it took away any argument that he didn't do it. It took away any argument that he did it in self-defense.
Witness 1's testimony under immunity, other eyewitnesses who heard the conversation, ballistics, and his behavior afterward, the running, the hiding, the silence. The defense never even tried to say he did not do it. Their argument was heat of passion, that being publicly called a snitch by a man of Nipsey's stature in that culture was provocation enough to make it voluntary manslaughter instead of murder. And people who came up in that world understood exactly what the defense was reaching for.
You know, Nipsey calling somebody a snitch in that type of environment. You know, someone of Nipsey's caliber doing that. Nipsey's a multimillionaire. Everybody knows who he is.
It's worse.
But the jury did not buy it because of those 9 minutes. On the 6th of July 2022, they convicted him of first-degree murder, felon in possession, 2 counts of attempted voluntary manslaughter, and 2 counts of assault with a firearm.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Eric Ronald Holder Jr., guilty of the crime of first-degree murder.
Eric Holder Jr. was convicted on 6 felony counts, including first-degree murder for the shooting death of Nipsey Hussle, who was born Ermias Ashkadom. It happened more than 3 years ago in the parking lot of the rapper's Crenshaw District store called The Marathon.
Before closing arguments, Holder himself was jumped in a jail holding cell and needed 3 staples after being cut with what was believed to be a razor. On the 22nd of February 2023, the judge gave him 60 years to life.
In an impact statement, a close friend to the rapper said that the loss of Hussle and his popular Marathon clothing store was a blow for South LA.
Everything we built got torn down. One man's mistake, one man's action messed up a whole community. Our whole community is suffering to this day. These kids don't have nowhere to go.
He is someone who put our community on the map. People thought that our community was just about violence, and Nipsey put a change to that. He was willing to partner to bring things to this community that we are now going to lose.
The defense tried again in December of 2022, asking the judge to knock the conviction down to second-degree murder or voluntary manslaughter, or to grant a new trial altogether. He said no. Then they went up to the appeals court, and the main thing they argued was actually kind of fascinating. At trial, the defense had tried to tell the jury what Holder was thinking and feeling in those minutes before the shooting, and the judge shut it down because Holder never testified, and no expert ever came in to talk about his state of mind. There was simply nothing on the record about what was in his head, so the judge ruled that you cannot stand up and invent it. Their entire defense was that he snapped in the heat of the moment, and they could not legally argue what was in his heart because the only man who could have told the jury what was in his heart refused to open his mouth. His appeal was rejected by the California Court of Appeal in November of 2024, and the state Supreme Court refused to even look at it in January of 2025. It is finished. He is not coming home. And I have to address one more thing before we move on, because if I do not, the comments will. The minute Nipsey died, the internet went to work. People claimed he was assassinated by the government, or by pharmaceutical companies, or by the Illuminati, to stop a documentary he was supposedly making about Dr. Sebi, the herbalist who claimed he could cure serious diseases with an alkaline diet. People pointed at a lyric in Blue Laces 2 as proof. Dr. Sebi's own family and associates came out and said there was no connection and that this was street violence, plain and painful. And the men from that world will tell you the same thing.
Eric ran through the alley, came back through the alley, and then Nipsey off. But the whole time is that he went back.
See, that wasn't on camera. The world didn't see that. He telling us some inside.
Yeah, no, the world, see, it's on camera, but there's only one angle. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like...
That is the whole tragedy in 4 words. And it is a lot harder to swallow than a conspiracy, because a conspiracy lets everybody off the hook. And that's where most people stop telling this story. But the person who paid the longest bill was not in that courtroom at all. Emani was 10 when they killed her father. 10 years old, and just weeks before it happened, she had been standing on a Grammy red carpet next to him. Then in June of 2019, less than 3 months after the funeral, she graduated from elementary school. She got up in front of the room and gave a little speech, and she thanked both her parents. She said she wanted to begin by sharing her thankfulness for her mom for believing in her and her dad for always being there for her. But behind that graduation photo, the family was already tearing itself apart over who was going to raise her. Here's the situation. Nipsey and Tanisha Foster were not together when he died, and Nipsey had primary physical custody of Emani in the years before the murder. She was living in that Ashkadom world. So in May of 2019, Nipsey's sister, Samantha Smith, filed a petition for legal guardianship of Emani in Los Angeles County Superior Court, saying she was worried about whether Tanisha could give the girl a stable home. The family went into court and made hard allegations about Tanisha being negligent, pointing to her older children and to her own past legal problems. And in October of 2019, a judge granted the Askedam family the guardianship. Emani lived with them while Tanisha kept fighting. Then came the 31st of March 2020, exactly 1 year to the day Nipsey died. Emani went live on Instagram, sitting outside, crying, and told the whole world what her day looked like. And then she said the part that broke everybody.
She said I can't come back until they're finished cleaning up, and they take the longest time to clean up. Ignore the bumps on my head, they're stress bumps. I tried to go to my grandpa's house. His car is in the front, but he's not answering the door. And so now I'm stuck outside. It's freaking hot out here, and I can't go back inside my mother's house.
The video went everywhere. Media outlets reported that she said she couldn't come inside because her mother was cleaning the house and it was taking a long time. People online lost it.
Reacting to the video, people felt sorry for Emani, with one commenting, "This poor baby, this really broke my heart. I was hoping she'd be with her aunt on this day. I feel so freaking terrible for her." Someone dubbed the video disturbing, while another called out Tanisha. "I hate how everyone is ignoring when she said she's crying and stressed. That is not okay. Stop making excuses for a mother that is Others think that Emani is better left on the care of her aunt, aka Nipsey's sister, Samantha Smith.
Now, let me be fair here, because the internet was not fair. Emani was safe, and she was eventually led inside her mother's house. Tanisha later posted a video of her lighting candles, likely to mark the 1-year anniversary of her father's death. Tanisha never publicly responded to the criticism at the time. Nobody knows what the inside of that house actually looked like that day, and thousands of strangers decided they did. And I want to be careful here, because the coverage back then was not careful at all. Some outlets treated a crying child as a segment, while others treated the whole thing as a chance to pick a villain. Reliable reporting on Emani's life has since pointed out that a lot of the wilder rumors that came out of that period, the extreme claims about her being thrown out for good, were mostly clickbait built on top of that one video. One bad afternoon got turned into a permanent verdict on a woman by people who were not there. The custody fight kept going for years. In 2022, Tanisha filed to end the guardianship, saying she had been in a bad financial spot when the original agreement got made, that promises about visitation and support had been broken, and that Emani herself wanted to come live with her. At that point, it had been 6 years of filings and hearings and headlines, all over one girl who never asked for any of it. And through all of it, she kept getting put on stages. In January of 2020, at 11 years old, Emani stood with her family as her father won his first Grammy posthumously for Best Rap Performance for Racks in the Middle. Her grandmother, Margaret, Lauren London, and her aunt Samantha were up there. That night, DJ Khaled dedicated the moment right from the podium.
This is for Nipsey Hussle. This is for hip-hop.
That was a win her father spent his entire life chasing, and he was not alive to hold it. His 11-year-old daughter had to accept it instead, 10 months after burying him and a few weeks before she got locked outside on his death anniversary. Then, in August of 2020, at 13, she was standing on Hollywood Boulevard while her father got the 2,729th star on the Walk of Fame on what would have been his 37th birthday. Her aunt Samantha got up and spoke about her brother.
Today is bittersweet. It's very bittersweet, but proud is an understatement. Nip, the great, look at who you are. Look at what you did. I'm in awe, but I'm not surprised. You've been a star in my eyes, the family's eyes, God's eyes, far before the accolades caught up. You've affected the lives of so many in the realest ways. You've been a pillar in our family, in the community. You've poured into me from day one, and I've always been so amazed and impressed at the example that you set.
Her great-grandmother spoke too, and she barely made it through it.
Hello, everyone. Nipsey was the love of my life. Always very respectful. I miss him, but I look at his picture and remember all the wonderful times we had together. I thank my daughter for blessing me with Nipsey and Sammy and Samantha. I love you all. He will never be gone in my heart.
While all of that was going on, money was piling up in the background and was about to become its own war. Nipsey died without a will. He died intestate, which in plain English means no paperwork, no instructions, nothing telling the court who gets what. For a man who preached ownership and generational wealth harder than almost anybody in rap, that is a brutal irony. So the state of California took over, and his brother, Black Sam, got appointed administrator of the estate. At the start, the court filings put the estate at somewhere around $2 to $4 million. That is real money, but it is not legacy money, especially not split between two kids with lawyers circling. And then Black Sam went to work for 7 years. Licensing, publishing, trademarks, music revenue, and growing the Marathon clothing brand. There was also a Puma deal Nipsey had signed shortly before he died, and Puma honored it after his death, putting annual deposits into the children's trust funds, whether the products sold or not. It was not clean work either. There were trademark disputes, including fights over the Marathon Continues slogan itself, plus creditor claims and valuation battles that dragged on for years. People were pulling at that estate from every direction, while two children who had done nothing wrong waited for the outcome. By 2026, the estate was valued at roughly $11 million. But before anybody could touch a dollar of it, the family had to stop fighting. In March of 2025, after roughly 6 years of war, Tanisha Foster and Black Sam finally settled. They agreed to joint physical and legal custody of Emani, who was 16 by then. Emani would spend about 60% of her time with her mother. Both sides would have an equal say on the big decisions, school, health, all of it. Tanisha was also able to keep her parental rights. Nipsey's mother, Angelique, and his sister, Samantha, stepped down as co-guardians, leaving Black Sam as the family's guardian figure. Even after the settlement, the money kept causing friction. In April of 2025, Emani's court-appointed lawyer objected to the idea of using Emani's own portion of the estate to pay the legal fees of her mother's attorney, arguing it was not right for a child's inheritance to fund the legal costs of somebody on the other side of the fight. That is what happens when grief and money share a room for 7 years. And then, in late May of 2026, something beautiful happened quietly. Emani graduated from high school at Fusion Academy's Warner Center campus in Los Angeles, class of 2026, at 17 years old. She had also spent time at New Roads School in Santa Monica, where she played on the girls' junior varsity volleyball team. Her mother, Tanisha, posted it around the 29th of May, 2026. Emani in the cap and gown, standing in the middle. On one side of her, her mother. On the other side of her, her uncle, Black Sam. The two people who spent 6 years suing each other over her, standing on either side of her, smiling. Then, weeks later, in early July of 2026, the court gave final approval and the estate was distributed. Emani and her little brother Cross, who was 9, each received 50%. The exact cash amounts are sealed, but the assets included ownership interests in All Money Inc., Marathon Studios, Marathon Touring, and Marathon Clothing Inc., plus trademarks, plus property, right down to a 2012 Chevy Suburban. Ownership of the Marathon clothing was put directly in the children's names to protect the legacy. A representative of the estate said simply that the estate had been finalized and Nipsey's assets had been distributed to their rightful beneficiaries, his children. And there is a piece of this that most people miss. Cross, the little brother, is only 9 years old. Lauren London acknowledged receipt of his share on his behalf. Reports around the estate resolutions indicate her side received settlements, including cash offsets along the way. So you've got 2 children from 2 different mothers, a 9-year-old and a 17-year-old, who now jointly own their father's entire company. If Black Sam had run that estate carelessly for 7 years, there would be nothing here to talk about. Instead, he took something worth a couple of million on paper and handed his brother's kids something worth several times that.
I think he would want everyone to remember that you can't get to what's possible unless you commit to moving forward. That doesn't mean forgetting where you come from, but it requires acknowledging the reality you were born into and the power you have to change that reality for the better. So whenever you're in the City of Angels and you see this star, I hope it encourages you to break away from whatever might be holding you back and for you to run your marathon until God says that it's finished.
That was Lauren London in August of 2022 at the ceremony where Nipsey got the 2,729th star on the Hollywood walkway on what would have been his 37th birthday. His father spoke too, and what he said cuts right to the center of all 3 of these stories.
Although he was taken from us too soon, he will live in our hearts and minds forever. Ermias may be dead, but that idea of faith and hope must endure. That is the challenge of my family and Nipsey's fan ahead of us to keep his legacy going forever. And today is the proof of that on his 37 years old, celebrating the truth of his legacy and cementing his achievement on the Walk of Hollywood.
And so that is one father, one daughter, and one ending that at least has some light in it. Now, let me take you to Chicago, where another rapper had 4 kids and a very different set of rules about how to keep them alive. Carlton Dequan Weekly was born on the 6th of December 1993. The world knew him as FBG Duck. He came up on Chicago's South Side, and the version of childhood he described in his own words was not gentle.
Yeah, it was a lot of reasons. You know, you lose people that's close to you. You know what I'm saying? You lose family members. You know, that shit hurt. You feel me? It ain't nothing you could do about it. If you want to go do something about it, you can do something about it. But, you know, I was a kid, so I couldn't take it out on who I wanted to take it out on. So I just took it out on a lot of other shit.
He said his cousin was killed by police in 2005. He said he lost aunties, uncles, cousins, and friends before he was even grown. And then in November of 2011, a 15-year-old boy named Shondale Gregory, who everybody called Tuka, was killed. Tuka was Duck's best friend.
When you found out about that, how did that affect you?
Yeah. I was really at a basketball gym. I was on my way home. And my cousin came in there running to me crying and I'm like, your friend just got real. You feel me? Then I ran all the way from 62nd and Wabash all the way to 63rd of St. Lawrence. Saved them right there on the floor. You know how that go, broke right down. You know, you see your friend dead, you actually gonna start crying.
After Tuka died, the guys from that area renamed their whole set after him, Tukaville. And this is the thing about Duck that the diss track version of him never captured. He was funny and sharp, and the people around him said he was genuinely good company. He also had a hard line, and it was about children.
Cause I don't condone that at all. Like, I ain't with that shit at all. Like, I'm a 100% or whoever shot a kid, like you like you get no respect, like you get no love. If we ever catch you over here, we gon' personally on my kids. But
now you have to understand the map because the map is the motive. Chicago's gangster disciples and black disciples both came out of one organization that split back in the 1970s after David Barksdale died. Then the crack era hit in the 80s, and then federal crackdowns in the 90s broke the big gangs into hundreds of tiny hyperlocal crews. Duck's side was Tukaville, gangster disciple affiliated, around 63rd and St. Lawrence. The other side was O-Block, black disciple affiliated, over in Parkway Gardens near 64th and King Drive. O-Block got its name from O.D. Perry, a 20-year-old who was shot dead in 2011, allegedly by a Tukaville shooter named Gakira Barnes. Then, in April of 2014, Gakira Barnes, 17 years old, was killed allegedly by King Vaughn of O-Block. O-Block is named after a man who was killed at 20. Tukaville is named after a boy who was killed at 15. These are not gang names. These are headstones that people started living inside. Every kid who repped either one of those names was repping a funeral he probably attended. And then drill music showed up and put a microphone on all of it. Drill came out of that same South Side around 2010, and the diss track became a weapon that could reach millions of people. Duck had songs aimed at O-Block. King Vaughn had songs aimed back. Duck used to say Vaughn was not even really from O-Block.
especially Vaughn, he know he got his ass beat. Tuga, he got his beat on the bus. You're not even from O-Block, bro.
He talked like that to everybody, including on a live with Tekashi 6ix9ine.
You got
meet
police.
me at O-Block in 30 minutes.
Look, our hood
Meet me
not
at
even
O-Block in
hot
30 minutes.
because you got all the police with you. So
Meet
our
me at
hood
O-Block
not
in
even
30
hot no more.
And the money that came in did not save him. It painted a target on him. That is what people who knew him kept trying to tell him, that you cannot stand in the middle of the trenches acting rich while everybody around you is hungry. He also lost his own brother. FBG Brick was killed in 2017. So this was never abstract for him, and every one of those songs had a real funeral behind it. Then, in July of 2020, he dropped a track called Dead Bitches, and it mocked dead O-Block members by name, including O.D. Perry. The song pulled over 41 million views. An informant later told Chicago police that a $100,000 bounty had been placed on Duck's head, though that claim was never proven in court. And here is the thing that kills me about Duck. He knew exactly what the streets could do to him, and he did not take any measures to secure his life or leave the area. Other rappers left, but Duck stayed and called them cowards for going. And the one place his caution actually showed up was with his children. He had 4 kids, and he had one rule about them.
I don't take my kids out in public.
You never take your kids out in public?
Never, because that's just me. Because I know the type of lifestyle I live. Why would I put my kids in harm's way? I would never do that. I don't take my kids out in public. I let their mamas do that. That's what their mamas can do.
So when you spend your time with your kids, it's always indoors?
Period. Always indoors. Like, don't get me wrong. I will take my kids outside, but it won't be in Chicago. It'll be a suburb somewhere,
He said he would take them out somewhere in the suburbs instead, anywhere that was not a block in Chicago where everybody goes. And when somebody asked him what would actually fix Chicago, he did not talk about police or politics. He said one thing.
Get them out of Chicago. That's it. All you gotta do is get their ass some money for them to be able to not stand on the block or want to go kill them. Get them something to do, you feel me? And I promise you, this world will be way better. Because as long as they broke, They're gonna always want to take and kill. And they're gonna be willing to do whatever to get some money.
That is a man who grew up watching his friends die at 15 and worked out the math on his own. Give a young man a reason to be somewhere other than the block, and he will be somewhere other than the block. It is not complicated, it is just expensive, and nobody wanted to pay for it. The people closest to him say he was always building something, always trying to figure out the next move. On the 4th of August 2020, FBG Duck broke his own rule. He went out shopping for his son's birthday. The Gold Coast is not the South Side. The Gold Coast is where you go when you want to feel safe. On the 4th of August 2020, at 26 minutes past 4 in the afternoon, FBG Duck was on the first block of East Oak Street, outside a Dolce & Gabbana store, shopping with his girlfriend for his son's birthday. This area was surrounded by designer stores, tourists, traffic, and cameras everywhere. He went to the safest street in the city to buy his kid a birthday gift. Roughly 16 minutes earlier, a stairwell camera inside Parkway Gardens recorded 4 masked men in dark clothing running down the stairs in single file. Outside in the parking lot, they split up. 2 got into a black Ford Fusion, and the others got into a silver Chrysler 300. Both cars pulled out, heading north. Police cameras picked those 2 cars up at more than 7 different locations on the way. 16 minutes from O Block to Oak Street. That drive is the reason they all got convicted, because you cannot call it a random act when a camera watched you leave for it. The 2 cars pulled up abruptly and blocked traffic, and the 4 men, now masked, got out and fired more than 38 rounds in about 15 seconds. Duck was hit 16 times in the chest, the back, and his limbs. His girlfriend was shot in the wrist. A 28-year-old bystander who had nothing to do with any of this was hit in the leg. Duck was rushed to Northwestern Memorial Hospital and pronounced dead.
It was back in August of 2020 that Carlton Weekly, who went by the rapper name FBG Duck, was gunned down in the city's Gold Coast while shopping. A joint task force of law enforcement working together on this one. And today, CPT Superintendent David Brown says this is part of a bigger strategy to thwart gang violence and maximize prison time for those who will be found guilty.
We are going after gangs in this city. This includes gang investigations, narcotics investigations, and gun investigations. We are working together to hold gang members accountable for violence.
Then, about half an hour after the shooting, the Chrysler was tracked heading back south and pulling calmly into Parkway Gardens. Guys who knew him understood immediately what it meant.
All his ops were rich, Kim. Dirk, that's one of his ops shit. Vaughn, one of his ops, he rich. Chief Keef, a op, he rich. This guy was still in the city, and all his ops were rich. You know, he at 63rd in St. Lawrence. You got 600, you got O Block. They was in the middle like a sandwich.
And in the prisons, where half the people he grew up with were sitting, the news landed like a death in the family.
I ain't gonna lie. NRC was sad as hell, but it was like, well, at least the tell I was on, I was like, damn, that shit crazy, woo, woo. Cause everybody was on that bitch rapping Duck, everybody was just rapping they particular Duck songs or Duck verses they knew and like that.
Now think about the rule he made for himself. He would not take his kids outside in Chicago and would only take them to the suburbs, somewhere nobody knew him. And on the day he died, he was not on a block or in the trenches. He was on Oak Street buying a birthday gift, which is about as far from his old life as a man from 63rd and St. Lawrence can get. It did not matter, because his ops drove 16 minutes to come find him there. The investigation took the long road. 5 men were arrested in October of 2021. A 6th, Ralph Turpin, was charged later in 2023. The 6 were Charles Liggins, Kenneth Roberson, DeCarlos Offord, Christopher Thomas, Marcus Smart, and Ralph Turpin, all O Block members or associates. A 7th alleged shooter, Izell Rawls, died by suicide in 2021 before he could be charged. The feds did not charge it as a simple murder. They charged it as racketeering, which meant they were not just prosecuting 15 seconds on Oak Street, they were prosecuting the entire O-Block operation. The trial started in November of 2023 and ran nearly 3 months. The prosecution's case was built on surveillance video, cell phone data, witness identifications, and social media posts.
There are now 5 people in custody who weren't in custody before. 5 people who were alleged to have committed a in broad daylight in the middle of the afternoon in the city of Chicago, okay? And now it's known to them, and it's known to anybody else who might be committing similar acts of brazen violence, right? And who may brag about it or not brag about it, that their day has come.
But here's where it got contested. There was no DNA or fingerprints linking any of them directly. The gunmen were masked and the video quality varied. So the defense stood up and said the whole thing was circumstantial, that the government was asking a jury to convict 6 men based on a story rather than on physical proof. Here is how the government said it broke down. Charles Liggins, called C. Murda, was named as the primary shooter. Christopher Thomas, called C. Fang, was a shooter who stood over Duck. Marcus Smart, called Moo Wop, was a planner and gunman. Kenneth Roberson, called Kenny Mack, was the getaway driver. To Carlos Offord, called Loss, drove one of the vehicles, and Ralph Turpin, called Teasy, was the spotter, the one who alerted the shooters to where Duck was. On the 17th of January 2024, after 16 hours of deliberation over 3 days, the jury convicted all 6. Murder in aid of racketeering, conspiracy, and firearms counts. The charge carries mandatory life without parole. Duck's mother, Lashina Weekly, said it felt like a big burden had been lifted.
I just want to thank the United States government for doing a very good job on making sure that these guys would never hurt another mom or another child again.
Except the burden did not actually lift, because those men still have not been sentenced. The sentencings were first set for August and September of 2024. They got pushed to 2025. Then, on the 12th of November 2025, every single date got canceled. As of 2026, there are still no new dates, which may point to appeals or new filings. 6 men were convicted of killing a father shopping for his son's birthday, and years later, his mother still cannot get a sentencing date on the calendar. So, she went a different way. In October of 2024, Lashina Weekly filed a 230-page wrongful death lawsuit. She named Lil Durk, King Von's estate, OTF, record labels including Sony, Alamo, Empire, and UMG, the city of Chicago, security firms, and Dolce & Gabbana. Her claim was that these companies and artists monetized real street violence through what the suit calls a reality rap strategy, profiting off streams from a beef that was ending actual lives. Dolce & Gabbana settled for an undisclosed amount in July of 2025, and in January of 2026, a court denied the motions to dismiss and allowed the case to move forward. And you can argue about that lawsuit either way, honestly. On one hand, no court has ever found Lil Durk criminally responsible for Duck's death, and calling a record label liable for a murder is a legal reach that has almost never worked before. On the other hand, a mother watched her son get shot 16 times over a beef that was being packaged, streamed, monetized, and sold back to the very neighborhoods it was killing. Somebody made money off that war. She just wants a court to say out loud who. Now look at these 3 stories side by side, because they are the same story wearing different clothes. Nipsey Hussle was killed over a rumor that a man who knew Eric Holder personally says was not even true. FBG Duck was killed over a beef that started with dead teenagers and got amplified into a product with 41 million views on it. And in both cases, the man who died had already tried to build a way out. Nipsey bought his corner. Duck signed a deal and told an interviewer that the fix for Chicago was as simple as putting money in young men's pockets so they would not have to stand on the block. Duck's son will grow up knowing his father died shopping for his birthday at the only kind of store his father thought was safe enough to bring him near. Emani lost her father at 10, got locked outside on the anniversary of his death at 11, spent 6 years as the subject of a custody war, and then at 17 walked across a stage with her mother on one side and her uncle on the other, and inherited half of everything her father built out of a car trunk on Slauson.